Hello and welcome to the Gadget Show podcast with Suzi and Jason
and someone in the corner.
And the ghost, the studio ghost.
Oh, I love the ghost. Oh, it makes it all a bit most haunted.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Listen, I know we're going to talk about what's coming up.
Yeah. What?
I need you to know that I've been asleep.
What have you been? Because you seem a little traumatised.
No. Oh, I'm supposed to be chilled, not traumatised.
You seem a little chilled.
Thank you. That's the correct question. I've been asleep in a field, basically making fires and just sleeping in a shepherd's hut for the last 3 days. So I do feel a little low tech.
Why have you been doing that? When there's a perfectly good house that you could have stayed in.
Because it's lovely.
Are you being serious?
Disconnecting, being with the sheep and the cows and the rabbits.
You've been with the sheep?
Well,
Is that why you're so happy?
No, we can't use this, can we?
I hope we can.
Shall we say what's coming
Might
up on
bump
the show?
up the viewers. Yeah, go on then.
Our headliner is the future of smartphones and where the flipping heck are our pocket supercomputers heading to next?
Where the flipping heck are they heading to?
I've
Thanks,
that.
Suzi.
Yes.
Someone needs to say it. Then we're going to say hello to this week's special guest, who I'm really excited to meet. It's another one of these YouTubers. Yeah. Daniel Rotar is his name, CEO. And head of the channel ZONEofTECH, one of the UK's biggest YouTube channels, who has a tasty eye for what's coming up around the next technological corner.
Oh, I love a technological corner, do you? Yeah. Then in the segment that Jason decided that we'll now call our final gadget of interest.
Yep.
It's quite natty, that, isn't it?
Thank you.
Yeah. The Insta 360, which probably says on the can exactly what it is. No? Well, it's a 360 camera.
Yeah. Okay, so plug in, boot up, and let's get on with the Gadget Show podcast. Okay, as has become the custom around these parts, we're starting with your comments and questions, which are just mega. First up, we've got PeteMan81 from YouTube. I'm liking the useless gadgets section, the wall of shame. Could that be a thing for the future? I think that's a great idea because we used to do that back in the day. And we haven't really... I
think we did the Hall of Fame, not the Wall of Shame.
Is that what... I
mean,
forget.
it might have been the same thing to you. I
can't remember.
We could do a take on it, perhaps for one.
Whatever it's called.
Yeah, we'll do the Wall of Shame.
I think it's a good idea. I've got some suggestions.
Yeah.
Some I saw the other day. It's called the Hot Doll, and I kid you not, it's a sex doll for dogs.
Oh, stop it!
Honestly, I'm not joking. And when I had a look at this, did a bit of a deep dive. It's not just one. There's a whole industry.
Did you use a different phrase?
Oh yeah, I shouldn't I? I had a googly schmoogle.
Okay.
All right, and there are loads of sex toys for dogs. It's a thing because I'm not a dog owner. I'm allergic to dogs, and apparently they hump everything. Well, is that a thing with dogs?
Don't you just give them a cushion or a teddy bear?
Well, yeah, but obviously someone saw a market there.
Well, if there's loads of that,
have a look at one of them. Looks like that Jeff Koons one, but it's sort of. You know, Jeff Koons, he makes balloon dogs, but out of metal as kind of pieces of art.
Yeah.
One of them looks a bit like that, but in black. I'm saying this so that if anyone's listening to the podcast, rather than those watching us today, they can get an image in their mind of their favourite pooch humping a Jeff Koons dog.
But is that not encouraging for dogs to hump more? Because... they can.
I think that's a good question. Look, in case you don't know, I'm not a dog psychologist. I just need to make that clear.
I did know that, though.
But I'm thinking if you prevent them from humping, that's going to make them rampant, isn't it?
Well, look what happened to you. Shall we move on?
Let's move on.
Okay. The Wizard on YouTube says you need to look at dash cams.
That's a great idea.
I like this one. So he says, I don't know if there's any that can actually record viewable number plates from a stationary position. Useless when you get sideswiped when parked up. Now, it feels like there might be a little bit of history there.
I think they've been sideswiped while they've been maybe in a car park and they've come back.
Obviously what's happened and then it hasn't captured it. But they are normally quite wide-angled, aren't they? Because I bought some for my nephew. In fact, my nephew had a few bumps and obviously, I kept paying the price for these bumps.
Right.
And I bought him some dash cams and 2 days after he fitted it, he caught quite a big accident on it and gave it to the people involved. They are brilliant. They bring your insurance down and stuff like that.
Slightly unrelated.
Yeah, go on.
I had one of those doorbell thingies that records video.
Yeah.
This is real. This really happened, right? I got a knock on my door. And my kids were quite young at this point. A knock on my door. It was my neighbour. And he went, Jace, come outside, mate. And it was a really weird, tension in his voice. I was like, okay. And he was, making sort of motions to me. Like, I'll come outside, there's something really important coming on, but happening, but get the kids out of the way. The kids, because they clutter around your legs when there's someone at the door, you know? So I pushed the kids back inside, squeezed them in, shut the door. I said, what? He goes, look, and come with me. And we walked out. Outside my house were like 2 or 3, you know those IKEA bags, those massive bags that you use when you move in house?
Big blue ones.
Yeah. Full of weed.
What?
Full of drugs.
Where's this story going?
And it was like, what, is that yours, Jace? I was like, no. My God. And there was hydroponic stuff in there and everything, right? And then, well, what do we do? Like 2 middle-class blokes, you know, with no understanding of drug paraphernalia, stood there, and we said, call the police. So we rang the police, right? Cut to like 2 hours later, the whole shebang's there. The flying squad, whatever they're called. There was I'm not joking. There were people in hazard gear, hazard things, and they're doing all this stuff. And they said, have you got a doorbell that does the what's it? And I said, yeah, I have. I've got a video doorbell. And I had to submit my footage to the FBI. It wasn't the FBI, but you know what I mean? It was like that.
MI5?
To
Scotland Yard?
Yeah, to the CIA. And I gave them my footage. And what happened was, they reckon that it was all on my camera. The drug guys had been done, you know, they were in a chase with the police or something. Pulled into our cul-de-sac, dumped their drugs outside my house, and then raced off.
The thing is, they must have known you lived there with us. Why would they have pulled into a cul-de-sac?
It was Gadget show viewers, wasn't it?
There's knowledge there, isn't there? Do you know what's really surprising about that story, though?
Yeah.
I just didn't know IKEA sold that kind of stuff.
Okay, can I do the next one?
Yeah.
We've got one from Mr. O'Deely of West London.
Oh, yeah.
It says, love the show. Please find attached invoice for my expenses when I came up to do the show to discuss air fryers. Mm-hmm. For your information, FYI, it was an organic cauliflower from a sustainable local source, which is why it was so expensive. I definitely did not buy it down the market from that bloke with an ankle tag.
Otis. Right, so the future of the smartphone then.
Oh, how exciting.
Because 80% of the globe have a phone.
That's
right?
amazing.
There's over 1 billion smartphones in the world. We look at our phone on average 150 times a day, which is extraordinary. It's an extension of us.
It is, yeah.
So to imagine that we're not going to have a little box in our pocket, quite difficult, actually.
I think you nailed it with it's an extension of us. And I feel that's the argument against the smartphone. You see, I look at smartphones and I do think that they're a bit silly. I think they hark back to the days of the old tablet. And I don't mean
you mean as in
Egyptian times.
Right.
I think they're almost funny.
Why?
Because they're just silly. They're heavy. They're just not a particularly adequate way of painting the world with information. And I now bring your attention to my bins, otherwise known as my glasses. This great big structure on the front of my face. Surely, in 2024, we are approaching a time when we can have enough battery power, enough processing power, possibly even a connection to the cloud, where I can start to do some of the stuff that I do on my phone just with my voice. And all of this AI implementation, surely that's going to help us to vocally interface with a search engine, bring up information and have it painted in front of me.
Right, so wearables then, functionality.
Like, what am I going to do with my glasses, you mean? Yeah. So in the post-smartphone world, I think, well, if I'm honest, and this is quite a sort of awful scenario, I think everywhere you go, there's going to be data painted everywhere, and you're probably going to have to pay to get rid of it. I think the cheap entry-level experience in the post-smartphone era will be a wearable pair of glasses, and you'll have adverts on every building. And that won't be a good experience. And so I'll pay for an advert-free experience where I will have information that's interesting, that's pertinent to me. So maybe navigation information, pictures of bits and pieces of content. We film this in Digbeth, don't we, this podcast, right? And as you walk around Digbeth, it might be interesting to know where Peaky Blinders was filmed. And I'm being serious. And there's a little bit of information about Peaky Blinders. And the new series is available on this platform when you get home or when you get on the bus.
I suppose in a way we're there in terms of audio already. So when you're, watching or listening actually in terms of YouTube or you have
Or the Gadget Show
advert free.
podcast.
You can have advert free, yeah.
Yeah.
Radios now you can subscribe and have advert free and have more music. So I suppose that's what you're saying on steroids in terms of visual content walking around.
Yeah, but if not, I fear that we'll be in some hellscape, some sci-fi hellscape where, you're getting, if you just had a baby, or get adverts for nappies floating above you as you walk down the high street.
God, that sounds horrific.
It does. And I think this is why this transitional period where the kind of party's over a little bit in terms of us willingly giving our data for free and getting bombarded with adverts. Like the internet used to be a place where you go and you could look at a blog or a news feed and you just get the news item. Now you play
can't find it.
You want to play it. It's almost like a game where you've got to jump over some stupid advert
and close everything that's popping up, and then you miss one, and it goes to it. You're like, no, I don't want that.
I mean, it's
so
absolutely
irritating.
awful.
Yeah.
If someone said to me that that could be cleaned up a little bit and we could go back to a simpler way of experiencing web pages, I'd probably pay for that service.
How much do you think legislation right now in terms of privacy is vital for the future? Has to be, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I don't see how that is going to be any different if you're wearing it on your face, though.
But I mean, if you're filming me with your face,
I see what you mean. Right? Yeah.
I don't want that. I don't want you to film me with your face.
Just grab that clip, pop it on social media, see if anyone. See what people think she's referring to.
Filming you with my face. No, but you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean.
In terms of privacy.
I think, and obviously we know because we've done the Meta glasses, haven't we? They make it very clear when the glasses are taking pictures or filming because they know that
I don't think it is clear.
Meta know that they're opening themselves up to litigation if they don't make it abundantly clear. I think in the same way that dash cams and also government devices that film for safety or speed restrictions and all the rest of it. A lot of this stuff is filming all the time and we're not told about it. And the only reason that we really tune into it is when you watch a kind of episode of CSI and you realise how many cameras the police have access to. So I think we're constantly being filmed. So I don't know if it's necessarily the sole preserve of glasses. I would have thought that was almost the least of your problems. I mean, yeah, it's a good point, but I don't think there's any solution to it. And I also don't think that Silicon Valley has particularly shown itself open to our concerns. I don't think they care. I don't think they care to ask us, to be honest with you. And that's a problem.
What about other form factors then? What about this AI pin?
Yeah, so this is like a badge that you wear on your lapel. It's got a camera on board. It supposedly can look at objects and explain what they are or give you context about them, which is sort of what I was saying about your wearable glasses of sort of 5 years and beyond. And it also had this really snazzy keyboard or input device that you could project onto your hand. So that was quite interesting, quite innovative, except in reality, I think what actually happened was the technology was too slow. It was too slow to respond to verbal inputs. It was too slow to analyse and provide anything informative. And the projected keyboard, although I've never used it, apparently coming from people that I trust, it wasn't very good. It wasn't great for actually inputting anything.
So the idea was ahead of its time in a way. But do you think with AI and everything that's going on at the moment, it come back and be better?
Well, I mean, that was the kind of cutting edge of where AI is. I mean, the equivalent device, I guess, would be that one from Teenage Engineering, who are a lot better at designing. I mean, the things they design are beautiful. They design like miniature synthesizers and drum machines and things like that. And they've made, I think it's called the Rabbit, isn't it? Again, I haven't played with it. I'd like to. I think it's getting better reviews than the AI pin. So these are interesting, divergent forms of post-smartphone devices. So they're wearable things. Yeah. But again, I think in a way, I'm such a gadget fetishist that if I'm not excited by it, then there's probably something wrong with it. Because it doesn't take much to get me going. And I've never really looked at those devices and thought to myself, that's a great idea. When I sit there with these massive glasses on my face, right, and I wear them every day, and I think to myself, well, once in a while they get a bit hot and sweaty, but most of the time I don't care. I don't even know they're on my face. That's where the smartphone needs to go. I really do believe everyone's going to be walking around with glasses, and I don't think it's going to be too far away.
I suppose the most developed wearable tech is the watch.
I hadn't even thought about that. That's a really good idea. Of course. Yeah, that's a great place to wear an AI localized processor with cloud connectivity. That's a really obvious idea. Yeah. So potentially the Apple Watch or equivalent could go in that direction, Susie, don't you think? And then maybe some form of holographic display, do you think?
Well, I mean, that's being talked about at the moment, isn't it? Holograms.
Yeah, we never seem to get there, though, do we? It's always a holographic effect. So it looks like a hologram, but it's not actually a hologram. It'd be really cool, wouldn't it, if you could get a kind of Princess Leia kind of help me, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope.
We definitely did that on the Gadget show about 15 years ago. I'm sure we did, yeah.
No, and so then you get into the other aspect of wearables, which is health tech, which has proven massive. It's huge for Apple, huge for so many other manufacturers like Samsung, Garmin, lots of other manufacturers have got into that space. There's so many.
And the Ring. Yeah. There's rings now, isn't there?
Haven't we? And we've covered stuff like that on the Gadget Show podcast over the last few episodes. But yeah, the health tech space is massive. And again, a wristwatch, because of where it's situated, obviously, is a great way of having access to some of your key, what would you call them? Your key vitals.
What about data delivery then? Because obviously 5G at the moment, 6G's being talked about and tested.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I've ever experienced a consistent delivery on 5G. Is that fair?
I think you're right. I think 5G was heralded as a huge jump forward.
It was supposed to be a game changer, wasn't it, in terms of data?
And it is. When it works, it is. Like as a gamer, for me, I have to be honest, the first time I was ever able to play multiplayer games on my laptop in a hotel room properly without using, say, Wi-Fi, using a cellular connection, was when 5G arrived. And the data speeds are extraordinarily quick. The problem is, if you move...
It goes 0 to 0, doesn't it?
It really does. Whereas before that, the likes of 3G or even GPRS, Global Packet Reporting System, and 4G, of course, they are more reliable as you move. I mean, again, it's not really my area, so I think what I'm reporting is accurate, that 5G doesn't work quite so well on the move. So if you're on a train, for example, which you and I do a lot of travelling, you do a load of travelling, the signal goes up and down, and so I constantly have to reconnect and stuff. And yeah, so 6G, of course, much more problematic. It's a much more technologically tricky thing to pull off, from what I understand.
Especially if it's going to be 30 times faster than 5G.
But they say they've done tests where they can deliver 1 terabyte of data in a second.
Unbelievable.
That's insane. That's quicker than plugging in physically on USB-C. So your 1 terabyte drive wouldn't do it. It wouldn't transfer videos and photos to an external hard drive in a second, would it?
No.
That's amazing.
If that happens, that's amazing.
And if we're going to go down this route where we're wearing it on a head with low power consumption, we're going to need quick data connection to the cloud. So maybe 6G is the answer, Susie, but I don't know enough about it to say when and how.
And then what about charging? Are we still going to be plugging devices in to be charged?
So I sound like this is my mantra. Anything connected to information technology is subject to the exponential curve, and that includes halving in size and halving in energy consumption every 18 months, right? That's the kind of Moore's law mantra, isn't it? And so if you take that to its logical conclusion, then yes, as devices consume less energy, we get more out of the same size battery. As battery technology constantly improves, and there are so many cutting-edge companies now working on battery technology because of the smart vehicle revolution. All of this has a drip down, doesn't it, to consumer devices. So
we could see devices without charger ports that are being charged through the airway?
And that's another point. No ports. That's a really key area of product design, both for laptops, tablets, and smartphones. So portless devices. So good point, Suze. We could say, for example, that USB-C, which is currently, in terms of general rollout, just about our fastest, generally adopted interface, that's going to go and be replaced by wireless transmission of data. And yes, wireless power has been talked about for a long time. I remember seeing wireless power at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas. So that has got to be, because I've not been for 10 years. So that's got to be 12, 13 years ago. And they were transmitting energy across a pretend room to a television. And they would switch off this it looked like a router on the wall, and the TV would go off, and they'd switch it back on, and the TV would come on because it was powered through the air. Obviously, it fried me like a chicken when I
was
stood
going
in
to
between
say,
the
it's
two.
the obvious question is the health problem here, isn't it? When you look at anything like that that's using air when you're standing in it.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole other discussion, isn't it? Around this, what does putting that amount of energy into that particular part of the spectrum do to anyone's
Our energy, effectively, in our cells.
Yeah, exactly. No, there are all kinds of issues. Assuming that they are properly tested and sanctioned and controlled, then some form of wireless power transmission to a device that doesn't require a lot of power because of the aforementioned leaps forward exponentially in terms of efficiency, could happen. But again, I haven't seen anything working that in my own sort of visits to various labs and startups that yet suggests it's around the corner.
I know that technology is drip, 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 and you can't imagine things, but we're only 5 years. We're talking about 3 to 5. We're talking about 5 years. Let's talk about 2030. Let's talk about that year. I can't imagine not having an actual phone to look at, a physical phone to look at. I can't. It doesn't feel like long enough away. Although,
until you've got a 14-year-old, and they start using an app or a social media platform, and you're like, what are you doing? And you don't really understand what they're doing, and they can't understand why you don't understand. And then you realise actually that it's quite generational, and that maybe the reason that we're so attached to phones is because we used to sit in the hallway next to the front door, next to the phone book, talking to our boyfriend for 10 minutes until Dad put his head around and said, "Can you get off the phone, please?"
He said, "You've been at school with them all day. Why do you need to talk to them
exactly
now?"
Do you see what I mean? And
I love those days.
I wonder whether there is the reason that it's harder for us to imagine being without a smartphone is it's that last umbilical connection to the landline that you and I grew up with, and whereas my 14-year-old didn't, so he just doesn't care.
I don't know if it's the fact that we've been through the era where all of the things that we would have used that now are in a smartphone, maps, compasses, telephone directories, all the things that we did on the Gadget show, we had like piles of technology. All this now is in this little box.
Incredible.
And it is incredible. And we saw that change. Maybe it's me hanging on to that. And, we are obsessed with our phones in terms of, even if you don't look at it 150 times a day, if you lose it, you go into a right spin because your whole life is in that phone. And I can't imagine my whole life being in cloud form and a pair of glasses. Am I just fuddy-duddy?
I think most people would agree with you. And I think there is a generation of people that possibly will always have phones. So if you think what I'm saying is that wave goodbye to your smartphone, it's gone in 5 years, they will not be a thing.
No.
I'm not saying that. I just think there will be...
alternative.
A slow move to the alternative. But once you put it on, the alternative, on your face, and you experience what these brilliant designers and software engineers can come up with, and you start to paint the world in a way that works for you, that isn't, abhorrent and full of adverts.
That's the phrase, though. It's got to work for you, because if you're walking around in a pair of glasses and the stuff going on, that is literally in your head. Whereas with your phone, you can switch it off.
Yeah.
Whereas when you put something on your face, that is your world then, because you're looking out of it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds. I'm not sure.
It's all getting a bit Black Mirror.
I'm not buying it.
And on that bombshell. Ladies and gentlemen of the Gadget Show podcast universe, say hi to Daniel from ZONEofTECH. Cue applause.
It feels like we need some applause.
Great to see you. Very smart.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jason and Suzi. It's nice being here.
Well, it's great to have you on the podcast, and we are fascinated by your story. You've got this incredible YouTube channel, which I think it's fair to say looks at sort of future gazing, phones, leaks. That's where you specialise in, right?
Yes, you could say that mostly, yeah.
Yeah. So can I just rewind and go back to the beginning of it? You're 30 now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you started this when you were a student. So,
Yes.
So just tell us from the beginning what your thoughts were and what you wanted to do and achieve with this.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Transylvania, Romania,
What?
so Vampire
I
Land.
love that.
For real?
From the
For
Carpathian
real?
Mountains.
That's an actual place.
Yes, it's an actual place, although I haven't really found any vampires yet.
Can I sorry, I know you're in the middle of a very important, but you do actually look like a vampire.
No, he looks like
Do I?
Andrew Garfield.
You look like Andrew Garfield. You look like a vampire that using some black magic. The witches said, "Who do you want to look like?" And you went, "Oh, Spider-Man." And then they made you because you're ridiculously healthy. You look like an apple, like you're like a little shiny apple. And then you've got Andrew Garfield's face. There's not a blemish on you. Your teeth are white. You're polite. Your shirt is you're perfect. And that's what a vampire is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unsettlingly perfect.
Thank you, Jason.
Over to you.
And here you were thinking you were going to come and talk about technology.
Yeah, I'm the vampire version of Andrew
good,
Garfield.
man.
Yeah.
It's good.
We'll take that. Let's go back to Manchester then, where you were studying.
Yeah, so like ever since I was really young, I was really into tech. Like I remember in my hometown there was this big tech store, and I kept asking my mom to take me there like multiple times every week. And I used to go there, and I was just looking at all of this amazing tech. I couldn't really buy anything because I couldn't afford it, but I was just staring at it. And I used to collect these tech magazines. I had a full cupboard of like hundreds of them. So I was really, really into tech from a very young age. And I was also into video editing. So I used to make gaming videos when I was 14 and edit those in Movie Maker, which was a really interesting experience. And at one point I was like, okay, what if I were to make videos of my own? Because I was kind of like this, tech support member of my family.
Right, yeah.
I created the channel. I created ZONEofTECH back in 2011. So a year before I actually started making videos, because I had my final exams to go into uni. I created the brand, the name, the logo, everything a year before. And then after I was done with my baccalaureate exam, that's when I started uploading the first videos to ZONEofTECH.
So did you go to uni then, or did you just say, I'm going down the YouTube route?
No, I did go to uni. So I uploaded the very first video a month before moving to the UK and going to uni.
Oh,
So,
how cool.
yeah.
What did you study?
Computer science.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, so you went to Manchester to
Yeah.
study, and this is kind of where it all started to grow, isn't it? Really. So you'd
Pretty much.
uploaded. You were the tech support for your family and all your friends. I mean, everybody knows what that feels like.
Yeah.
But suddenly it became more than that. But we've talked about growing a YouTube channel on here before, and it takes a lot of work, a lot of dedication, and a lot of patience, doesn't it? So, how long was it until you actually started to, get some income, or when did you think I could make something out of this rather than it being just a side hustle?
Yeah, so I was doing this on the side, sort of like I was, studying in the day and then working on the videos afterwards. And it wasn't easy. Like I remember having to wake up at like 5 a.m. to go to one of the university rooms to be able to record before the students came in, because my place just didn't look great. Lots of stuff like that. And it took about a year and a half until I had my first check from YouTube, which was a 60-pound check.
So a year and a half's work for 60 quid.
Yes.
That is dedication.
I mean, it just goes to show, doesn't
Yeah.
it? But it's an incredible story of sticking to something, which I feel like in our disposable society at the moment, people tend to not have any concentration or determination. If something doesn't work in the first 5 minutes, they're on to the next thing and the next thing. But, here you are, now a very successful YouTuber, but you had to go through that time of, not making any money at all. And as you say, like moonlighting at university, using their lecture rooms as your studio and all this kind of stuff. And it's a great story, isn't it?
It's
of
great.
Success.
It's really inspiring. Yeah.
So at that point then, when you got your first check of what did you spend it on, by the way? 60
I bought a
quid?
hard drive
Of course you did.
to store my videos on.
Amazing.
Yeah. And where did you think then, right, I can make something out of this? Was that a pivotal moment, or did you always know that it was going to work?
It was definitely a pivotal moment, because back in the day, there was this separate YouTube partner program that you have to enroll in, and it was really, really difficult to get into that. And now they still have it, but it's way, way easier. And I remember when I got accepted into that and I got my first check, that's when I was like, okay, this can be a real thing. So then I kept on doing it. The next check was, I think, like £200, which I used to buy a monitor. And then eventually I got a camera. So I kind of upgraded the setup, because initially I was recording everything on my iPhone. I didn't have a tripod, so I was using a broomstick and a box, which I duct taped.
Love it.
So cool.
Yeah, very weird setup.
So it's like a mini Mr. Beast philosophy, isn't it? Like you just reinvest back into the channel.
Oh, yeah.
And I suppose during this time, you were watching your uploads and you were seeing what was working and what wasn't working, what was piquing an interest, who was watching and that kind of thing. How did that work for you?
Yeah, so I used to make just different types of videos. I did some reviews on the products that I had, which back then wasn't a lot. So I started making videos on upcoming products. So I was using images, I was using rumors, leaks, everything that was online. And those did quite well. And then I started doing more of those. And then once I could afford actual products, then I bought those actual products. I started doing reviews, comparisons. So it became a mix of everything. And yeah, over time, it just kept on growing.
And was there one video that kind of really took off that went viral and just kind of stoked the fire even more for you?
Oh yeah, for sure. There was one video, which was back in 2014. I did a video on everything we knew about the upcoming iPhone 6. And it was a 20-minute something video, and it ended up getting 8 million views.
Good grief.
Yeah, which was a lot back then.
Back then, it's a huge amount of views.
Because the channel was really, really small back then. So 8 million views was like insane.
So that really got you noticed?
Yeah, like I started getting recognized throughout my university by students, and it was weird. But yeah, that was definitely the moment that grew the channel quite significantly. I think that video alone converted about 20,000 subscribers, something like that.
Wow, it's
or more.
A moment just can switch
It's great.
things. It's a sliding doors moment.
Yeah, but it is. But equally, it's an interesting sort of algorithm, isn't it? And you can see how it actually is very addictive.
Yeah.
From a kind of entrepreneurial point of view, that you know, it does give you that kind of adrenal kind of hit, and you're ready for the next one. Can I crack that again?
Yeah.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And what was going on with your family? Because you were over in Manchester and presumably had your own studio by then, or your own flat you were using.
And if you rang up, obviously because they can't come out at night, they'd all be asleep, wouldn't they? So that was difficult.
What was their reaction? What were they thinking at this time?
So my family, all of my family was and still is back in Romania. And they were impressed at the beginning. I mean, even more so now, of course, but they were very supportive. And initially, I didn't tell any of my friends. Like, I kept it a secret for a few years because it was just weird. And obviously, eventually, you know, people discovered. Yeah, they were quite supportive. They were my first subscribers. Like my cousin and my mom, they were my first 2 subscribers.
That's
so
cool.
cute, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's move things forward then. Obviously, this has become a huge animal now for you and a great income and you know, so your videos are very slick. They're very highly produced. What's happening next? Where are we going next with technology? How do you feel about where technology is at the moment in terms of consumer tech, obviously?
So I do feel that technology today is stagnating a bit. More specifically, smartphones, you know, they've had the same form factor for so many years now, you know, the classic rectangular look. And of course, they keep on getting thinner bezels each year, and the back gets a new color, and the camera modules get slightly bigger. But the main idea has remained the same since, I would say, 2008 or so. And of course, nowadays we have foldable phones, which is essentially the first new thing in quite some time. So that's quite exciting, I would say, because for the first time in so many years, we are getting something that feels fresh.
If you're, no disrespect, but if you're 30, it feels new. If you're 55, then
they're a bit different to the clamshell, though.
But do you know what I mean? Because I mean, you know, I'm being silly, but you know, the almost the first swathe of mobile phones were foldable. We used to call them clamshells, didn't we?
Yeah.
So it actually is a bit of a return to a retro form factor. I understand there is a quite a big difference because you're folding a sophisticated screen, aren't you? Whereas we were just kind of protecting a tiny screen.
Yeah, and also a different reason in that obviously we weren't watching videos or content really on our phones in the clamshell days, where we were just making calls.
Yeah.
If you've got some phones with you.
Yes, I do have a few foldables in my.
Do you want to
Grab them, dude.
Get them out your bag and let's have a look.
Yeah, sure.
Daniel's got his foldables out. He said he's just bought a few. There's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on the 10 on the table, including your special one. So just take us through what we're looking at here.
Right. So we are looking at a number of foldable phones throughout the years from different brands. So we have Samsung, we have Google, and we also have Honor.
Now, just for those listening, the color array is actually quite shockingly different. We've got beautiful sort of metallic baby blue. We've got all the gunmetal greys. Got a nice dark one from Samsung. They're all sort of quite large form factor, aren't they, Suzi? You know what they remind me of? Talking about retro phones. Do you remember the Nokia communicator?
Yes, I had one of those.
I know you did.
And I loved
remember
it.
Yeah. Well, these are not dissimilar in form factor.
Yeah, true. Well, that was quite chunky. These are a
bit more
obviously,
slimline.
yeah, very slim, aren't they? I'm wondering whether the idea of these is to be a tablet killer. Is that a too headliney thing to say?
I would say so, yeah. So essentially the idea of a foldable phone, and you have two types of foldables, by the way, but the main type is the type that is essentially a tablet, and then, you can fold it down into a smartphone form factor.
And I suppose
Can I have a play?
The problem,
Yeah.
I'm imagining the problem with a lot of them is the line down the middle if you're watching a movie. So you've got to find, you're loving that, aren't you?
Oh my God.
That's the best.
I don't know
looking
whether to open it or
No, just open it.
mildly
Jez.
hump it. I mean, look, I picked it up. It's the Honor Porsche designed. Which one is this?
So this is the Honor Magic V2 Porsche design. So it's a special edition.
It looks like a 911 in phone form. I mean, it really is a very Porsche design. It's got a sort of gunmetal outer, and it's got like a raised ridge, isn't it?
That's the raised ridge, like on a dog. If we're staying with dogs, the South African Ridgeback. It's beautiful.
That is the weirdest analogy.
No, it's not, because that's what it looks
But
like.
it surely it looks like a car.
It does. That's the idea, yeah.
And a dog.
What are you like? I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It's so thin. I'm almost afraid to open it. Can I ask you something, Daniel? So this is one area of tech that I'm not really up on, if I'm absolutely honest with you. And what worried me about so it was Samsung that really went big on this, a few years ago, isn't it?
Yes.
And they had issues, didn't they, about creasing their screens? Is that still a thing? Because that's why, as a consumer, I would hesitate to get a phone like this with its massive. I'm looking at a huge square screen now. I've opened it up.
Yeah, so I mean, foldable phones have a number of issues, given the fact that you have a screen that literally folds. They're not very durable. Most of them are not water resistant. Some of them are, so the Samsung ones are, the latest ones. But the issues that Samsung had were only present in the first model, you could say. So the very first Galaxy Fold, which is this one right here,
That's the one, yeah.
which launched back in 2019. That's when it was introduced. So this one had some issues where it kept on breaking. So if dust could actually get under the foldable screen quite easily, and then it would, break the whole phone. But they fixed that.
And
so that's now fixed.
you can see just holding this. This is the Samsung, the original Samsung.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little chunkier. It's a little bit small. It's not as deep, is it? In terms of a screen, I'm not sure that you kind of need that extra inch almost. What are you doing? Stealing his phone?
No.
I saw that. No, I saw that. You can't steal from
I was
guests.
just doing the pocket
You can
test.
steal from companies, but not guests. That's the rule.
That's the Gadget Show rule.
Gadget Show rule. But there's certain things that I suppose that you want, and I can see the line down here, which would be, I think, annoying if you were watching. And I suppose that is the hardest thing to...
You mean the crease in the centre of the
crease
screen?
in the centre.
I've also got a question as well, Daniel. So, as a bit of a gadget aficionado, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, well, what I want is that 16:9 format, which I suppose actually, as I say that, I realise I'm talking to this young chap, and actually you're all about the vertical portrait view, aren't you lot? Whereas me, brought up, no joke, on black and white, like movies. Like the 16:9 thing is served so well by one portion of the phone. When you open it and it's the screen is in full view, it's actually it's more like a 4:3, which is like a traditional television format. So to what extent, how does it work? Like, what does it give you? What's the point of this? Why would I choose this above the standard 16:9?
And by the way, if you're just
widescreen
listening
phone?
to this, essentially, what the size of it is the size of a piece of toast.
Yeah, it's like a square of like a large square of toast.
Yeah, so you're essentially correct in what you said, Jason. So yes, when you unfold the foldable, most of them have this squared off form factor. So if you prefer watching 16:9 content, which is what most YouTube content is, it's not gonna occupy most of the screen. You're gonna get these massive black bars. So in that case, you're better off just watching it on a normal phone because you're kind of getting the same aspect ratio. But if you read content, that's where a foldable phone shines.
Yeah, okay, I hear you. Good point. But of course, when it comes to a foldable format that might give us what we're after, which is a 16:9 display, but in a much smaller folded phone, I've just picked this one up off the desk. What one is this?
And this is the Galaxy Z Flip 5.
Okay, cool. So that makes a small square, a bit like a
Nintendo DS.
a Nintendo. I was going to say makeup, and you're going to say Nintendo.
Oh,
But you know what I mean? It's like a DS, isn't it?
it's that sort of size, and you open it out to what we expect to now be the size of a phone.
So that's actually an innovation. That's a move forward, isn't it? And I'm quite taken with this because I sort of hate the weight and the size of the smartphone that I currently use. It kind of it doesn't fit in my back pocket very well. I'm always getting told off by my wife for putting my phone in my back pocket. She's convinced that there's thieves everywhere. And whereas this would this would fit really smartly. It folded as it is into a square into my pocket.
Yeah, it's like a little notebook, isn't it?
And that's the thing. This type of foldable, this is the second type that, normal phone folds in half, as opposed to the tablet form factor that just folds into a phone. This is way more popular. So this is what most people buy.
Is it?
That's interesting.
Can you get covers for it that stop it from being
Yes, you can.
shattered if it falls on the floor?
You can, yeah.
That don't impede the opening function.
Yeah, you cannot get a single case. It's essentially a two-piece case that goes on the top and the bottom, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, man.
Can we move forward to all the hoo-ha that's going on at the moment about Apple and AI, please? What are your
Sure.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I do have a lot of thoughts, but to summarize it, Apple recently introduced Apple Intelligence, which is their version of AI on the phone. And it's quite unique in the sense that up until now, we've had apps like ChatGPT, for example.
Well, we had ChatGPT as a guest on our podcast.
Yeah,
I
it
saw
opened
that.
the show for us. It was good, wasn't it? Worked
It was really
well.
good.
That was, yeah. Although there's been a hoo-ha even about that since we recorded it, which of course is that Scarlett Johansson as lawyers are. I think. I mean, I don't want to. I can't say exactly what's happening because I'm not sure. But I think there's a court case pending.
They asked her to use her voice, and she said no.
Yeah, and it
then
sounds
they
so
used
like
a
her.
voice that was exactly like her voice.
Exactly.
So yeah, more to come, I think, on that
But
one.
Apple Intelligence, because the thing is, they needed to step into that arena because let's be honest, Siri sucks. I mean, and I
Siri
don't.
does suck.
It really is in the age of GPT 4.0. Something like Siri just feels completely outdated.
Yeah. So how is it working with Apple then? Is it a multi-level thing?
So it's very unique in the sense that with ChatGPT is of course an app. So you need to open up the app, you need to ask questions, attach photos and that sort of stuff inside the app. Whereas Apple Intelligence, it works. It's like a universal thing. That's
It's a
system-wide.
cross-platform solution, isn't it?
Exactly. It's a system-wide implementation which works across your notes, messages, email, almost every single app, including some third-party apps as well. And then you can get all of these AI features, like you can summarize. When you write an email, you can summarize it. You can change the way you write that email. Or if you prefer to use Google Docs, you can do it in there as well, Word. So it works across basically any app.
It sounds like a great solution. The only issue is that the compute required to make that something equivalent to OpenAI's platform does require hooking up online, getting connecting to a cloud service so it can do the big heavy lifting with all the machine learning and the deep learning, all the rest of it. And of course, they announced that that's going to be done by OpenAI. And then of course, Elon Musk jumped into the fray, hasn't
Got
he?
his knickers in a twist, hasn't he, about it?
And so he should, because there are real issues around security, and yet it's so ironic because Apple have been selling their products very recently in the last year or so with a whole series of billboards that I've seen about how secure, say, Safari is, for example. So that there seems to be a bit of a mismatch there.
So what about the privacy issue then?
Okay, so I think there's a lot of misunderstanding just because Apple implemented all of this in a bit of a weird way. So they have 3 implementations of Apple Intelligence, essentially. Or, sorry, 2 main ones. So there's the on-device processing. So if you have an iPhone 15 Pro or newer, or an M1 MacBook or iPad or newer, you can use the Apple Intelligence features. And these are processed on device. Now, when your request is a bit more complicated, then it gets sent to Apple servers. So they have this thing called private cloud compute, which is essentially a server that uses Apple Silicon again. So same chips as the iPhones, the Macs. So anything that gets processed on there is still private.
Yep.
And then if you've got a question that Apple's intelligence cannot answer, then you get the option to send it to ChatGPT. So that's optional, and you get a warning for that.
And then that's not private.
That feels clunky, though, from a user point of view.
That's what I asked about the sort of layering of it, because it feels like it's a two-step process. Am I reading that right?
Yes, it's a 2 or even 3-step process, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure this. I mean, okay, look, Tim, everyone at Apple, all you brilliant people. Jason's not sure this is going to work. Not sure how you feel about that, guys. No, but just at this stage, we can think about it. And my initial thought was that sounds like it's currently the problem with Siri, although you can have an kind of always on function with Google's AI, but it's just I don't want to have to wake it up or press a button or as you were saying with GPT-4o's app. I want to just talk to my phone like Iron Man talks to his AI. And I just want to say, I need to write. Have I got anything planned for today? Or could you respond to Matey Boy from that job and say that I've read their email and I'll get back to them. I want to have almost like a PA, like a personal assistant that is omnipresent, that understands what I'm doing that day, where I am, understands that I'm a bit of a numpty. I'm being serious, I forget things, and to help me to be more efficient. And for me then to have to engage various agreements along the way, because this aspect goes to OpenAI, this aspect stays within the Apple ecosystems, feels a bit clunky. What I find really interesting is that arguably the most cash-rich corporation that has ever existed in the history of humanity, Apple, don't have a solution that is capable of doing the heavy lifting that OpenAI, who've been around for a mere matter of a few years, is capable of doing. And that's quite extraordinary. And it gives us insight into just how remarkable what OpenAI have achieved. You think Apple would have their own solution, is what I'm trying to say. But they clearly haven't. Do you think they're maybe using it as a leg up until they actually...
I think so, yeah.
They actually move to their own secure solution?
Because Apple was quite late to this whole AI party. I mean, they've just joined now, whereas, ChatGPT has existed since, I think, 2020 or 2021. That's when
2024 years. Oh, my God.
No, look how far it's come.
Fascinating stuff,
it really
dude.
is. Hey, so what's the plan for the channel? Where does it go?
Well, the plan is to make more videos, better videos, and then to expand the team as well. In the future, and just make better stuff, more fun stuff, and explore.
Well, good luck with it, my friend.
We wish you the very, very best. It's been
Thank
lovely
you.
to chatting with you today. Thank you so much
Likewise.
for coming in.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks,
Thank
Daniel.
you, Suzi. Thank you for having me.
Right, Jason, what is this section called?
It's called Final Gadget of Interest.
Yes, and this week it's the Insta 360 X4.
Oh, love it.
So it's a little bit bigger than its predecessor, the X3. It's an immersive 360 camera, basically.
Looks like a chalk ice.
Yes, it does look like a little chalk ice. And it's quite weighty because it's quite rugged. But the big thing is it films in 8K.
Unbelievable, this thing.
And the reason that it films in 8K is so that you don't have to worry about the framing. So you can reframe in post effectively.
Right, because the resolution is so high,
Yep.
you can pump out 1080p.
You were not
to your heart's
losing,
content.
so you're losing the quality, but you're going down from such a high state that you still get very, very good quality. And the stabilization in this is fantastic.
So if we want to carry on this show and cut down on costs a little bit, we could use this guy, that guy. Danny can stay, right? But the 3 cameras can go, and we've just got Danny's just chilling out, on a WhatsApp, whatever, and we've got that on a tripod.
Well, you could film this podcast on that camera.
Would you like to describe what this chalk ice actually looks like?
So it's a little rectangular block, and then towards the top, you've got your camera, and you've got 2 cameras, one on each side, so more than 180 degrees. They're like fisheye lens. And because you've got more than 180 degrees, they overlap. So you get this beautiful 360 content.
So your arm is kind of
so if you were using
vanished, isn't
exactly, it vanishes. And if you had a selfie stick, it knows, and it will take that out.
So there's no stick. There is just literally almost like a drone hovering above you, fully stabilised.
Yeah, pretty cool, right?
Absolutely
And
amazing.
Also, just another little point, it's waterproof to 10 metres. So if you're a diver, you can dive with this. And then if you go beyond, you can get a special...
a little kit.
A little kit for it. Yeah.
Well, it's. I mean, if anything shows you, where these tech teams are going, these boffins. Oh, well, why don't we do this? We can boost the resolution on it. We can make it safe for 11 meters underwater.
Also takes away any talent of
amazing.
having to frame or film or be a cameraman. Sorry, guys and girls. You can just
The one
literally
thing I would
put
say-
that there and then cut into it. I mean, where do you think you would use it?
Well, obviously, I'm living in Cornwall, aren't I? I go surfing once a week.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to capture, certainly my son, who's actually a good surfer as opposed to me. And I'd love to just get out there with my gear on, sit in the water, get him to tear past on a wave and be able to then edit after the fact. That's the thing with a conventional action camera that I'm more used to using.
Yeah.
I've got to make sure that I'm being a good camera operator, which is hard when
Yeah.
you're in the water.
So you don't have to with that.
No, with something like that. It'd be great to get it on a stick and have sort of above him, as he goes on a wave. It'd be great, wouldn't it?
It'd be great. Do you know where I'd like to use it? I'm not allowed to. I'd like to use it on the MotoGP grid because I can only
amazing.
see little parts of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, where I'm looking, and it's always so busy.
Yeah.
I'd love to do my presenting and just hold it up and just be able to see absolutely everything that's going on and who's changing tyres at last minute, where's the sucker punch coming from, who's late, who's wandering off for a comfort break. You get the whole atmosphere of it. It'd be really interesting.
No, I think it's a really interesting thing. And I think when you start creatively vibing off it, that's when you've got something truly useful.
Yeah, love it. That's it for another episode.
Amazing.
We hope that you've enjoyed it, found it illuminating, learned
Great
something
guest.
useful. Oh, yes.
As the undead go, he was a very warm.
Stop
He was
calling
very
him a
warm.
vampire.
Do you know what I mean?
To the touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he was great.
We'll see you next time.
Right, we're off to shoot the world in 360.
So it's not just us saying goodbye, the whole team, because you're on camera, guys.
Give us a wave.
See you next time.
Bye from us all.
The Gadget Show podcast with Jason and Suzi was presented by Jason Bradbury and Suzi Perry off the telly. It was produced by Ewan Keel and Tom Clint and is a North One production.